The following podcast contains spoilers and words like and gosh. Mate, did we watch a thing this week?
Yeah, we did. Hello, thanks for joining us. This is We Watched a Thing, and I'm here to tell you, we watched a thing.
A thing that many would argue you and I should have watched quite a long time ago.
Yeah, so fun story. This is a patron request, and neither of us had seen it. I remember well this film coming out and didn't see it at the cinemas and then never caught up on it because, quite frankly, word from everyone I knew was pretty bad.
Yeah, and yet it's lived on in the zeitgeist for a very long time. And maybe part of that is just because it's a King adaptation done by Darabont, so it has that kind of legacy where people kind of lump it in with Shawshank, which is still the number one film on IMDb. So maybe that's part of it. Let's get right into it then. Green Mile, 1999 American fantasy drama film written and directed by Frank Darabont and based on Stephen King's 96 novel of the same name. It stars Tom Hanks, Clarke Duncan, David Morse, Bonnie Hunt, Dog Hutchison and James Cromwell. And what is it about, Toph?
Well, it's a kind of mystical drama about the episodic happenings of a death row ward in, I want to say, Louisiana?
You are correct.
Yes. Killing it. Did the homework. Or just watched the movie.
In 1935. So from what your kind of preamble there, it sounds like you went in with very little expectations. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I'd never been fussed about the fact that I hadn't seen this film. To me, it felt kind of weird that I hadn't seen it because it's just a movie that a lot of people have seen.
Yeah.
And as you say, it still has kind of some cultural currency, if you like. But I just wasn't fussed. My assumption was that it wasn't particularly good and that the only reason to see it was if you were interested in watching the Clarke Duncan breakout happen on screen in front of you. So I was kind of surprised when I quite enjoyed this movie.
Yeah, I loved the crap out of it. I also had not gotten around to it, which is strange because I am a big Stephen King fan. I remember reading the novel, which is actually split into 6 quite small books. It was very serialized. And I remember very much enjoying that. It's been a long time, but I had never gotten around to the film. And quite frankly, for me, this beats out Shawshank, honestly. If I was going to put them head to head and compare them as the 2 King adaptations by Darabont set in a prison.
Yeah, really spreading his wings, wasn't he, with this one?
Yeah, I absolutely loved this film.
You can really imagine a world where, or imagine a 1998, if you like, where Darabont was approached and was like, no, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm just rehashing. I'm not going to, adapt a Stephen King film set in a prison. And then they showed him the check and he was like, oh, okay.
Do you know much about the Darabont-King relationship?
No.
So do you know about Stephen King's dollar babies?
You've told me about them before, yeah.
Yeah, because I was thinking we should get in on one. So Stephen King, because he is such a prolific writer and because so many of his works have been made into films, he holds aside quite a large majority of his short stories for what he calls dollar babies, which means that indie filmmakers, film students can buy the rights to these stories for $1 each to produce as a film.
And many of them are worth most of that dollar.
Yeah. For the most part, the clause is that they can't be released publicly. That they're meant to be, for students to kind of work and they all, you have to send a copy to Stephen King and he keeps it. Darabont had made one of these dollar babies, The Woman in the Room, which I guess Stephen King liked so much he let him release it in 93 and it was a semi-finalist for the Academy Awards. And that is how the relationship...
As a short, is that right?
As a short, yes.
Yeah, right.
And that is how the relationship between King and Darabont started. And so King gave him the rights to Shawshank for free and said, go ahead and do this. It was just like a handshake, basically.
I suppose the studio would be happy they didn't have to front up for Shawshank because it then made no money. But presumably Green Mile then, with the kind of cachet of, hey, it's the band getting back together.
Yeah.
One would imagine that the resourcing for Green Mile was some way in front of Shawshank.
Yeah, you'd think so, yeah.
I think there's probably evidence of that, in fact, in when you look at, particularly early on in the film, where there's a lot of shots that are outdoors, and you look at those shots and how clearly selective they were at the time of day that they shot it. The beginning of this film is, it's actually broadly a really good looking film. These exterior shots at the early part of the film is just really good looking stuff due to when it was shot. Like, clearly they were like, we're not just going to go out at midday and roll the cameras. It's like, we're going to be a pain in the arse and wait for magic hour.
Yeah.
and studio, you're just going to have to front up the money for everyone hanging out for that long.
Yeah. I mean, because magic hour generally lasts less than an hour, honestly. Like, it's called magic hour, but you're probably, like, realistically, what would you say you're looking at? About 27 to 35 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the season. In winter, it's like whole seconds.
Yeah. Very true. I agree. I very much like the look of the film, and I think it quite holds up when you think about how old this film is. It doesn't look dated to me, which some films from around this era very much do. You can look at them, you can listen to them, and you go, oh, this is a film from the 90s. This film very much seems timeless, and I don't know if part of that is that it is set in 1935, so maybe it doesn't have that extra baggage of, the 90s aesthetic, but I actually just think it's a really nice looking, timeless film.
Yeah, it probably hit at a pretty good time because in 99, this is the same year as The Phantom Menace comes out, which is like one of the early ones to push that, okay, can we do this with a digital camera?
Yeah. And
now you look back at the image of a Phantom Menace and it was like, well, not really yet, no.
Yeah. We're quite there, George.
even ignoring visual effects, which of course date as time goes on. Like, you just look at the stuff in Phantom Menace that is real and it's just a bad image.
Yeah.
Whereas this, of course, you just at that point, like the tipping point hasn't come yet with digital. The only way they were ever going to shoot this movie is on film. Yeah. And that's probably held it in really good stead for the past 20 odd years.
Can we talk casting for a moment?
Absolutely.
Now, you know that I've never been the biggest fan of Mr. Hanks.
That's true.
There are very few roles I've enjoyed him in. Woody is probably about it, and maybe that's because you can't see his face. But when Hanks was in the conversation for this film, Stephen King was very happy because apparently he wrote the novel with Hanks in mind.
No kidding.
No kidding. And I must say, this is easily my top Hanks performance. I think that he is absolutely perfect in this role. I think that the character is supposed to have this certain level of kind of naive charm that Tom Hanks has. And maybe that's why I haven't really liked him in a lot of roles. I don't ever feel like there's a lot of depth to Tom Hanks. Like he's known in Hollywood as like this lovable, friendly guy. And I think that tends to be what he plays and how he comes across in movies as well. And there's not really a lot of dimension there. But I actually think in this role that works really well. And I just think he completely nails it. I loved his performance in this for the first time I've ever enjoyed a Tom Hanks performance.
So funny that. So as far as I can understand it, I'm on the side of the argument that's the rest of the world in liking Tom Hanks. I don't love this Tom Hanks role.
You're kidding? Really?
And I don't know if it's that somewhere in my brain I can't buy him as a death row guard. Maybe it was at some point I was doing some kind of internet scrolling and I saw William Hurt's name mentioned around this role and I was like, oh my God, I would love William Hurt in this role. I would absolutely love it. But it's nowhere near peak Hanks for me. So that's funny.
This for me is easily his best performance. I think the character and I'm a massive Stephen King fan, and I think the thing that he does absolutely better than anybody else is create characters. And I think that that's why I didn't even really feel the 3-hour plus runtime of this film, because I think the characters are just so strong that I could watch them happily. I could watch Tom Hanks piss about 20 times, which luckily he does do in this movie. I've never seen somebody take so many pisses on screen.
I was a bit let down by that, because you watched this before I did, and I was getting a kind of real-time commentary on Tom Hanks relieving himself in the film. So I was actually really underwhelmed when I came to watch it at how little of that action there was compared to what I was expecting.
He does at least 10 times. He just flops out his willy and has a slash.
I was surprised he ever had his pants on from the way you were describing it. But it's funny you mentioned the runtime and the kind of episodic nature, because if Green Mile's made now, it's like 8 parts on Netflix.
See, and this is the crazy thing, is that audiences are actually more used to longer movies these days. When you actually think about it, not a chance in 99 would any of the MCU movies been over 2 hours, right?
That's 90 minutes.
But it is so funny how the audience mindset has changed. For some reason, in 2020, we are much more attuned to popcorn films being longer, and dramatic pieces like this, if they're longer than an hour and a half, as you say, it's a fucking miniseries. Unless you're Scorsese.
So many of like the little critical darlings, like your Minaris of this world.
Oh yeah.
Are now these shorter, smaller things, and as you said, the big popcorn fare is just getting longer and longer. So that now, when one comes out and it's 2.5 hours, you're not even shocked. It's like, yeah, of course it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or in Zack Snyder's Justice League's case, roughly 3 days.
But yeah, I did not feel the runtime of this film at all. How did you feel about that?
Look, I felt it to a degree, but I like a long movie, so yeah. I was not remotely upset at just settling in for the long haul with it. Going back to the cast, as you raised, absolutely thrilled to see my man Barry Pepper teaming up with Tom Hanks in short order, because they were in Saving Private Ryan together at around this time. Barry Pepper is probably, in terms of actors who like you bought a ton of stock in when you first saw them, I had all the Barry Pepper stock, and it's now worth absolutely nothing. My man Barry just didn't really, his career just didn't pan out the way that I wanted it to for him. I'm a massive Barry Pepper fan.
It's a fun name to say too, Barry Pepper.
When 25th Hour came out, I was like, it's here, it's happening. It's happening. It's the time of the pepper. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. But always thrilled to see him. I love that guy.
Yeah, I think he's great in this. I actually think that all of the cast is great in this. I mean, as you said, this is the kind of awakening of Michael Clarke Duncan, and I had heard so much about that performance, obviously, and I mean, it is a beautiful performance. And again, I think so much of that comes down to the writing, both by King and Darabont, who are both, brilliant writers. I just think that character is so well written and so interesting. And yeah, Michael Clarke Duncan is just great in that role.
It's a very serious rig.
Oh, jeez.
I mean, there's no way,
isn't he?
You can't not talk about it. It's a very serious specimen.
I mean, jeez. You just want to be curled up in those arms, don't you?
Incredible. It's a great bit of set design in the film, and this needs to happen more than once, because Michael Clarke Duncan is about the same height as David Morse, who I actually did not realise was as big a dude as he is until he's standing next to Tom Hanks. And I'm like, wow, David Morse, big dude. And then, of course, elsewhere you've got everyone's favourite farmer from Babe. His name is just completely
James Cromwell.
James Cromwell, thank you. Who's a seriously tall dude. Yeah. Like James Cromwell does have a couple of inches on Michael Clarke Duncan, but it's shot quite cleverly in the even old long drink Cromwell, as I believe he was called, is looking up at this
just a
mountain
beast of a man. Yeah.
But there's things like, so his, Duncan's cell is smaller than the others, so that he just fills it more, and his bed is actually a bit shorter than normal, so that like he literally can't lie down straight in the thing. Now, they probably don't need to be that small because the guy is freaking massive.
Yeah.
But they do a great job of accentuating the size of this dude.
Yeah.
Who's the kind of, like, I suppose, king's reimagining of St. Christopher, which becomes very apparent later on in the film, becomes very direct.
Yeah, so let's talk then about the magical realism elements of the film. It is, I mean, I guess you could define it as a fantasy film in some ways, and there is lots of symbolism. As you say, St. Christopher, there's clearly some religious elements going on. Did all of that work for you? Because that's the kind of stuff that, for me, I generally love on page, and it very rarely translates as well to screen.
I largely liked it. The way we find out about Coffey's gifts, I think, is done well. I like that it's often done in a reasonably understated. I mean, understated. Like, there are light bulbs going and stuff, but it's not. He's not like casting spells.
Yes,
You see the outward representation of what this guy's able to do, and I actually think it's really well done, with the exception for me of the bugs coming out of the mouth afterwards. I'm like, this, I quite frankly think is quite silly.
Yep. No, I completely agree with that. I think that, as you say, most of it is so understated. And, just, like when he cures Hanks of his infection, like his bladder.
Grabs him on the taint.
Yeah. Like, that is very underplayed in a lot of ways. For me, when the bugs come out of the mouth, I agree. That kind of just goes to the next level and kind of takes away the realism of the magic realism, I think.
Kind of sounds silly when you say it, but I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah.
For me, I was like, oh yeah, that was really well done. That was a nice moment. And now there's bugs coming out of his mouth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And unfortunately, like, that's one thing that, like, the CGI of that.
Yes. I was going to say.
It's by no means bad for 1999, but it just has aged at this point.
Yes, definitely.
Another good bit of set design and really just writing, like, and directing is the state of the restraint room that they first go in following the mouse, and that this thing is just being used as a storage room, which actually is just a really nice bit of character information for Tom Hanks's character, that they have this room where they can just throw people if they're out of control. But we just find out that it must have been, like, God knows how long it's been since this guy's actually had to use this place.
Yeah.
Because, as we know, and this just reinforces it, this guy is just incredibly civil and treats people, some of whom have done horrific things, with an incredible degree of civility. And lo and behold, that works.
Yeah, and that's why I was a little surprised earlier when you said that maybe you had trouble buying him as a death row guard, because I think that's one of the things about the characterization is that he's not what you typically think of as a death row guard, and I think that that's exactly why the casting works so well, because, as you say, he's incredibly civil. And I think it would be so easy to, and I don't know, maybe some people do read this movie as a bit of a statement against capital punishment. I actually kind of don't think that's what the movie is doing at all, really. I think the statement of the movie is to be kind to everybody. As you say, some of these people are horrendous, and maybe some of these people do deserve capital punishment or some form of punishment, but it doesn't mean that you can't treat them like humans. I think that that's really what the movie is trying to say.
For me, there's no way to come out of this film thinking that King is pro capital punishment.
Well, no.
Like, particularly, like, I mean, the climax of the film involves an innocent man being put to death.
Yes.
Something which happens in real life, and as I understand it, was by no means a direct. It's not like Coffey is, well, clearly, like, Coffey's a walking miracle. He's not directly based on a real person from that kind of time. But there was a young black man from I think that kind of time who was a specific reference, who was, put to death and then proved innocent, which happens. Like, it happens. So for me, it's impossible to come away without thinking that Stephen King and I are on the same side of capital punishment. That is the state shouldn't kill people because killing people's a really shit thing to do.
Yes.
Well, I personally like the way that Darabont handles every scene that involves old Sparky.
Yeah.
It's interesting to read that Tom Hanks wouldn't sit in it, in the chair.
Yeah, right. Just looked too real for him.
Yeah, and he was just like, nah, I need to stay on this side of it. And also that thing, just nah, not for me.
Yeah. I mean, it would be a pretty fucking awful way to go. I mean, yeah, wouldn't.
Especially with the dry sponge, as it turns out.
Oh, see, that scene. One thing I was surprised by was how full on this movie got at times. I was not expecting that at all. That moment really took me by surprise, as did the moment when you see the flashback of Coffee with the two dead girls in his arms and there's just blood everywhere. I didn't go into this movie thinking that was what this movie was. For some reason, I thought that this, even though it's set in a prison, I thought it was your more kind of uplifting, happy. I don't know why I had that connotation with it. And like I say, I'd read the book, but it was such a long time ago, I had virtually zero memory of it. It was quite shocking, that scene with the dry sponge.
This must have been a pretty big break for Sam Rockwell, I would have thought.
Yeah, I was thinking that as well. This must have been one of his earlier.
Is this the same year as Galaxy Quest? Is that 99?
Yes.
Love me some Sam Rockwell.
Who doesn't?
I think at this stage of his career, he may have been, I'm going to say maybe he was trying just a tad too hard to be like, look how talented I like. I just think, look, I don't think he's bad in the film, but like it is kind of wound up to 11. And for me, if it was just dialed back a little bit, I think I would actually like it more. Because there's a lot of what he does that I think is really good. And then there's times where I'm just like, oh, steady on, Sam.
Bonnie Hunt is quite good in the film as well for the short amount of time she's in. It's another very heavily slanted male film.
I was going to say, there's no woman in this film that isn't the wife of a major character, is there?
No, it certainly wouldn't pass the Bechdel test. There's no women talking to each other, that's faux show. She talks only to her husband, as it should be. Yeah, it's actually, to me, a little disappointing that she's not in it more, because I actually think that she's very good in the few scenes she's in.
And also another wife in the film who was having a big 1999 is one of the cancer patients from Fight Club. She's Gary Sinise's wife in the film.
Right.
So I've now seen her in two films, both from 1999. Absolutely killing it. She's the one in Fight Club that's, Meryl Streep's skeleton. If you smile and be nice to everyone at a party, that's her. It's pretty convenient that the guy guilty of Coffee's crime is like
in the next
literally
cell.
next door.
I know. It is quite convenient.
That's stunning.
Yeah.
Big country, big state. But there he is. Got caught. Like he must have been caught for, I don't even know what he was caught for. Got caught for some other crime.
Yeah.
Like a week after. Jesus. This guy was on a serious tear. One of my least favorite bits of the film actually involves it's the revelation that Sam Rockwell's character is the man guilty of Coffee's crime. Well, not Coffee's crime, the crime that Coffee has been done for. That flashback sequence where I don't know exactly how they filmed it. It seems like it's running at like there's 12 frames a second or something like that. It's just this kind of, shortcut look of just so you know you're not watching, the real world kind of thing, which maybe it wouldn't have bothered me in 99, but at this point is just, for me, become like such a staple and cliche of flashbacky type stuff that I'm just like, it was kind of eye-rolly for me.
I agree completely. And I think the biggest problem for me with that is it's so unnecessary. Like we know that is a flashback, just narratively. Like the guy is currently in prison. like we've seen the whole magic touch thing. We know that this is flashing back to a memory or, we just literally don't need it at all. There are times where I don't mind the whole, going to sepia, for example. I don't mind that when it's necessary, but I agree with you. Here it was completely the wrong choice.
People sometimes complain that like only one kind of film gets nominated for Best Picture, but 99's kind of wild in that you have both The Green Mile, which, yes, it's a dramatic film, but a fantastically dramatic film, and The Sixth Sense.
Yeah.
And this is back when there was, in my opinion, the correct number of nominees in 5. It's 2 out of 5 were in some way otherworldly. And that's truly one of the great cinema years in past decades. 99, like the amount of the different groups of 5 you could do.
Yeah.
To either make it you could either try and make it look quote unquote normal, or you could just do your own favorite. Like the different kind of wrinkles you could do in the 99 Best Picture race is actually really fun if you just want to go full nerdy and just see what could have been nominated.
Yeah. I mean, even looking at what was nominated, as you say, the fact that The Sixth Sense, a genre piece, got nominated, looking at the nominations for adapted screenplay that this was up for, you had Election, one of my all-time favorite comedies, Alexander Payne, based on the novel by Tom Perrotta. Talented Mr. Ripley was that year as well. Not a favorite of mine, but I know a lot of people enjoy it. It was, I agree with you, good year for cinema.
And I'm not sure if this was the only Best Picture nominee that wasn't nominated for directing as well, because Spike Jonze was in the directing category for being John Malkovich, and Darabont misses out for this, which I'm not like totally sour on. Like it's a well-directed film. It's a kind of, nicely presented kind of formal filmmaking style that I actually really enjoy. But I didn't watch this and then go, Darabont was robbed. No,
I agree. And I actually think that Darabont's biggest strength is in his writing and particular adapting. Like he has a very good skill for taking source material, I think, and nutting out what needs to make it to screen and how you keep the story. And some people might say this film is too long. I think that he struck the balance completely here. It was funny. After this, I decided to go and I completely forgot that he had written 1994's Frankenstein with Bobby De Niro as the monster. And Darabont came out saying, this is the best film I've ever written and the worst film I've ever seen. And he's not far off. Like, again,
who directed that?
What's his name? Old mate who also starred in it.
Oh, Branagh.
Yes, Kenneth Branagh. Yeah. And it's such a quiet story, and the screenplay is adapted very well. Like, it is so faithful to the source material, probably to a fault, because most people, I don't think, really know what the source material is.
Well, that's true. Like, most people think that Frankenstein is the monster. So.
That's right, yeah. But it is so over the top in the way it's directed. Like, it is such a loud film. Like, everything is... There is music under the entire thing. It's insane.
Green Mile, like, as we said, really... Yeah, very, very nice looking film. Very appealing looking film. Probably... in terms of like the fantastical elements of this film, a death row ward looking this nice might actually be top of the heap. The same director of photography as Con Air. So,
classic.
We talk about the kind of the ability to make iconic images, and certainly the image of Tom Hanks with the light bulb kind of exploding behind him. That's like that genuinely has like lived on.
Oh yeah,
in the public psyche over the past 20 years. Certainly not as much as Nick Cage's mullet in The Breeze as he steps out onto the tarmac.
That's what I was just going to say. That shot of him on the tarmac with his hair blowing in the wind, and he's kind of doing that smell the fart look where he's just kind of looking off. It's absolutely a classic shot.
You want to talk about some gifted cinematography.
I know. I mean, how nicely does he shoot Tom Hanks having a piss? Like, I'm not even joking here. There is a scene of him out in the snow in the middle of the night where he's pained on his face. And he completely resists temptation to move the camera down and look at the dick. And it's really nicely shot.
Fun fact. So Harry Dean Stanton's in a few scenes in this film and is actually really quite delightful in it.
Yeah.
There's characters in this film, Harry and a Dean Stanton.
You are correct. Yeah. I mean, the characters were probably named after him. Like, Stephen King is a big pop culture head. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
So would you, like, it's been 22 years now. Would you, like, how keen would you be if Netflix said we're doing Green Mile in 8 parts with my guy Kyle Chandler in the lead? Like, would you be here for it?
Absolutely, I would. Yeah, 100% I'd be here for a remake of this film. And, you know, it's funny. I know people are very against remakes, but it's interesting. I'm a big fan of The US Office, which I know that you haven't watched yet.
I love how you always say yet, like you think I'm going to get to it one day.
I still think that you really should. And you and I, you know that we're both gigantic fucking fans of the original Ricky Gervais show. The US Office is completely different and you kind of have to separate from it. But it was funny. I was listening to an interview with Greg Daniels, who adapted it, and when he was trying to get writers to come on to do the show with him, and everyone was too afraid, nobody would do it because they were like, we're going to fuck it up, you know? Like, it's not going to work. We can't adapt this. It's too good. Why would we do this? And he said, well, why would you remake something shitty? Like, if you have the chance to make something, don't you want it to be the best possible thing it could be? Why would you take something shitty and remake it? Of course you're going to remake something that's already good. And I don't know, since I heard that, I completely understand where he's coming from. Like, there's all this talk about, you can't touch that, it's perfect. I think if you take it out of that lens and view it as something different, I kind of don't think there's anything that shouldn't be touched. You know, as long as people bring something different to it. What I think doesn't work, you look at like Gus Van Sant's Psycho remake, where it is shot for shot. That is a pointless exercise.
Well, yeah, I mean, the point of that is not even the film. Like, doing it that way itself was kind of a comment, and the end product is kind of almost beside the point.
Yes.
But yeah, there's plenty of great things that people like. The Wizard of Oz is a remake.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, do people want to give that back?
Yeah, and honestly, why not remake it again?
All right, me and Kyle Chandler, we're doing this.
I mean, not Kyle Chandler. I mean, someone better.
Hey,
I would be all for this.
Here's what I would do if I was remaking it, though. Personally, I'm doing away with the framing device of this film. I don't like it.
So framing devices are a mixed bag, obviously. You think of, for example, The Princess Bride, fucking classic, and it adds to the story. I actually quite liked the framing device here as well, and it is easy to forget that it's there because from memory, it's only at the beginning and end. Is that correct? It's not like The Princess Bride where it cuts back at any point. So it's easy to forget that it's there. But I think that really the point of the framing device is to show the future, really. It's to frame it in the perspective that he has now lived this long and doesn't know how much longer he has. Yeah, I think, to me, it works quite well. It's almost that he was both blessed and cursed. Like, he was healed, but he's watched everyone around him die now.
Yeah, and as he was explaining that, I mean, just literally explaining it,
yes.
I was like, I don't care. Like, we reached the high point of this film. The climax happened a little while ago. It's a great scene. There's a come down from it. Fucking roll credits.
Yeah, right. Okay. That's totally fair. Like, I was
like, here I am watching one of my least favorite bits of the film, and this is what you're leaving me with. Get out. All right, Billy. So just before we wrap up here on Green Mile, I need to ask you who takes out this week's Wangro Cup for the actor who didn't realise they were filming.
This is another week completely unprepared. You know what I'm going to need you to do? I'm going to need you to message me. Just cheeky little reminder. All right, let me think here.
And you can't say that Tom Hanks just needed to take a pee. I'm putting a line through that. That's too easy. Sorry, sir. That is too easy.
That is exactly what I was going to say, though.
No, that low hanging fruit, I'm banning.
Oh man. Okay, let's see here. Who didn't know they were filming? You ready for this, Mr. Jingles?
That's just a piss weak answer.
That mouse had no idea what he was doing, mate. They just let a mouse out of a box and hit roll.
And it just turned out that it could do tricks.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they incorporated that into the story.
Yeah, they actually weren't expecting that, is my understanding of it. It was just meant to be a very friendly mouse, and then they found out he could do things, and it was like, well, fuck, keep rolling.
Yeah.
That's why the film ended up over 3 hours, because they added in all that stuff of the mouse.
Right.
Yeah.
So the Wangro Cup doesn't go to the actor who intentionally trod on the mouse because he just saw it one day and was like, fuck.
Yeah, well, that's right. Yeah, he had no idea. Yeah, so there's your answer.
So was the original mouse is the winner of the Wangro Cup that the mouse specifically that gets squashed because someone was like, fuck.
Yes. Because then they had to get in the actor mouse to replace the dead one.
Yeah. Seems like it would have been easier to just cut that scene.
It would have been, yeah, but that's not how Darabont rolls.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
All right, so how are you scoring this?
I enjoyed it. I'm a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm an 8. I very much enjoyed this film. As I said, I didn't really feel the runtime, would happily watch it again, would be all down for a remake. And I think for me, this is definitely as strong as Shawshank, if not possibly stronger.
Look, I think Shawshank being top of the IMDb 250 is ludicrous.
Yeah.
But only because I'm like, come on, people. It's not the greatest film ever. Having said that, I do really like Shawshank. And I would clearly take Shawshank and Shining over this in terms of King adaptations. But yeah, I was like pleasantly surprised.
Yeah. The IMDb top 250 is kind of, I mean, do you put any stock in that at all, mate?
Well, not at all, because putting stock in that would involve putting stock in people, and I'm not big on that.
All right. Well, I'm so happy that I finally actually saw this, and I feel sad that I probably wouldn't have if I hadn't have been forced to by a patron. So thanks, mate.
Like when we put it on the other night here, my other half was like, how long's it been since you've watched this? And because, you just assume that people have seen it. It's weird that we hadn't.
Yeah, I know. My wife, who hasn't seen a lot, had seen this, and yet I hadn't. All right. What are we getting to next week, mate?
I can't even say it.
I think we're getting some rock action on, aren't we? Are we going to go cruising in the jungle, my friend?
I think that's the plan.
I'm really curious about this.
Why?
Well, because movies based on rides aren't a good thing, right? They're just not. It's the same as like movies based on games, like fucking Battleship, or, let's say they made a Hungry Hippos movie. Like, how fucking great would that be?
They will. Don't tempt fate, mate. They'll do it.
But Disney did a very good job with the first Pirates of the Caribbean film. It is actually a very good, fun adventure film. Now, obviously, this has The Rock in it, which to me already sets the tone for you. It already puts it in your mind that this is not going to be a great movie. This is going to be kind of a silly family action film.
But it has Emily Blunt in it.
Exactly. So I am very curious to see where this film lands. My expectations aren't high at all. I haven't seen a single trailer. I don't know if you have, but I'm curious. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, I am not curious at all.
We'll also hopefully, I know that at the end of last week, we said that we were getting to the new Shyamalan this week. Unfortunately, that didn't happen because of scheduling. But I think Sam Hurley from Movie Reviews in 20 Qs is keen to hop on and do a bonus ep with us about that. So hopefully that might come out in the next week as well.
Good for people who ride or die for Shyamalan, because I think this has buyer beware written all over it.
Well, I've seen it already, so I don't want to say too much.
Well, no, you shouldn't, because you're going to do an episode on it.
It's a mixed bag, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
All right. In the meantime, if you want to get in touch with us, you can do that at wewatchedathing.com or wewatchedathing@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all under the handle at wewatchedathing. If you want to help support the show, you can do that at patreon.com/wewatchedathing, and we'll catch you next week.
Watch a movie, folks.